Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show.
Hello, I'm not Benji.
Hello, and yeah, I'm not Nick.
And here we are on the Benji and Nick Show, sort of talking like this.
Nice and close, cozy up to the microphone whilst the raindrops of the skies outside tip-tap on the windows.
Yes, it's raining here. It's raining in both of our locations.
Well, it looks horrific outside for me because I've got a boiler, and so I can see a bit of the steam from the boiler outside my window, coupled with the rain. It looks looks horrific actually. It looks quite frightening. But that's the way it goes. So yes, you are listening to the Benji and Nick Show, that one-stop rockin' shop for all things cult and strange and wonderful, and also Gerry Anderson. So we've got lots and lots of funky things to look forward to today.
That's right. This week, once again, by popular demand, we're talking about the BBC One children's TV programme, The Changes, broadcast originally in 1975. Yeah.
Brilliant. I was there. I remember it.
You big fibber. And so Benji and I have been dutifully watching that. We will be talking about it very soon. And sorry for all the people who've also felt the need to go out and buy it from the BFI.
Well, yeah, we just do the world a service, don't we, really? We're just boosting DVD sales across the land. But, yeah, I like to think if you buy something, like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you like it, then, hey, Merry Christmas. You got yourself a gift. Yeah, you got yourself
more profundity from Benji Clifford there. But if you buy it, you don't like it, but if you buy it, you do like it. Wow.
Well, hey ho,
I mean, you win some, you lose some. Many a mickle, max a muckle.
Well, there's some terrible film I remember buying years ago. It was absolutely dreadful, and it was some old sort of 50s film about this man who was a robot, but he was a sentient robot, and he was like a sort of I can't remember what it was called now, but it was utterly dreadful, and it was really bad acting in it. And they all, like, the robot, he talks like this, and he's just a man. And I remember he had really high-waisted trousers. I remember I bought that because I thought it looked brilliant, and then this is before like YouTube was a thing. This is years ago. And it was so bad.
Check it out on YouTube. Yeah,
it was so bad that I put it on eBay, and I ended up writing a real rousing review of how brilliant it was, just to get rid of it. And some sucker did buy it, and so perhaps they did enjoy it, perhaps they didn't. But yeah, all I know is if I make a robot, he won't have trousers that high.
That's I think Isaac Asimov said that as well.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure it's a very, very important phrase there. But anyway, before we get on to the changes, and I've already talked about some strange stuff already. Here's a reminder that the Benji and Nick Show is sponsored by the Gerry Anderson store, and that can be found. I love the good.
So I'm just doing all the incidental music of every Gerry Anderson show.
Oh, so good. But yeah, you can find it at gerryanderson.co.uk. So as we do every week, because it's pretty cool to have a little gander. Let's have a look.
What have we got here?
I was just typing, and I did a typo, and it came up with Gerry Anderson. I'm thinking,
who's Gerry Anderson?
I don't know, but I like to think he's constantly gets people say, "Oh, I remember when you did that great show, Thunderbirds."
I'm not, Gerry.
I'm not. This happens every week.
Running out of patience. Anyway, what have we got?
Oh, we got the usual rocking things. A limited edition Thunderbird laser etched grey day glass crystal cube, which looks awesome. It's like 3D TB1. That's really quite cool. Well, it's like it's there in your living room.
What happened if you shine a torch through it? Would it sort of,
I don't know. I think it'd take
life?
off, I suppose. It's got Thunderbird stickers. We've got the UFO Complete Series on Blu-ray, which is just really...
UFO is something we have to talk about.
We've got to do UFO at some point. Absolutely. There's quite a lot of cool UFO stuff there. Thunderbird X car. I love all these little kits that you can get, little model kits. I think that's just awesome. And as well as that, they've got a lot of things on there that you can't... Well, I say you can't get over in England, but you clearly can, because... You can on the website, but a lot of it is stuff like Japanese sort of merchandise, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, which is great. And what any particular Gerry Anderson thoughts for today, Benji? I mean, you mentioned UFO there. I'm thinking of getting that digitally because I've got it on DVD. Yeah.
Can you get it digitally? I'll probably say this every week. Can you get that digitally? I assume you probably can, actually. I
bet you can.
I like owning things on Blu-ray because of the quality. But that said, the HD you can get on stuff like on like the iTunes, the Apple stuff is pretty good now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So if
that's what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Let's have a look.
UFO. There's so many things called UFO.
There's UFO Hunters UFO. Series 1. That's not it.
What if I put in Gerry Anderson's UFO? That might help, mightn't it?
I bet you can get it on maybe like the Amazon. No, it's come up with UFO the band.
I'm only getting the music, so that it's not available. Unlike Space 1999, it's not available as a download.
That's interesting, but we say that, but then on the Gerry Anderson store you can get the box set. So
I know, but I've already got that.
I haven't. I need to sort my life out.
I was just thinking of getting it digitally, so I've got it on my computer.
There must be somewhere that does it, surely. Like, let me have a look on
download.
Amazon.co.uk on the Prime Video stuff.
I'm not subscribing to Amazon.
No, you don't have to subscribe. You pay for it on things, but as if it's on there. UFO TV series. Complete series on Blu-ray. Space 1999. No, it's not up digitally, so there you go. You have to get it in that format. Nothing wrong with that, okay. But there we go. Hey ho. Yeah. But did I have any Gerry Anderson thoughts? I actually did, funnily enough, earlier in the week. I had one of those thoughts because I was walking along. I can't remember. I think I was in town. I was out shopping.
And was your walking a bit strange? Like you were
I was sort of
by strings.
Well, it's funny. I do that sometimes. I just suddenly think, I fancy walking like a puppet today. But in the middle of town, they're building this massive sort of complex. It's like a huge new shopping centre. And it looks amazing. But I was thinking, I've no idea what it looks like inside. But I was thinking, for some reason, it comes to mind. I was thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if it looked like the sort of like those Captain Scarlet sort of future Thunderbird style buildings that have that sort of slight 60s twist?
Yeah,
because
they were made in the 60s.
But I always sort of think that like the 60s, especially, does the future better than the future. Like it makes this classy vision of the future so nice with like. It's hard to explain what I sort of mean, but it sort of things seem they get the balance of like futuristic with like stylistic comfort and slight class. Yeah, if you look
it's certainly very interesting looking at 2001: A Space Odyssey and what they thought the 2001 would look like.
Yes, and instead it looked like hair gel and baggy trousers. But that's what 2001 looked like.
Hair gel and baggy trousers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I've just watched it and I couldn't see any hair gel.
No, as in actual 2001.
Oh, I see.
No, not in that. That would have been.
And you said, yeah, hair gel. Well, what is? Did I have hair gel and baggy trousers in 2001? I don't think so.
I distinctly remember that being like a big thing, like hair gels.
Baggy trousers. I didn't have any hair, so we can forget that.
Figurative, metaphoric hair gel, maybe.
I did once use hair gel.
Did you?
And all my hair snapped off, and now look at me.
There's a lesson to be learned there, boys and girls. But yeah, so I think it's wonderful when you do look back at these old shows and you see the ideas, the visions for the future.
I'm waiting for the time when buildings can do what they did in Stingray, or when there's an emergency, thing slides open and the whole building goes underground.
It's the dream. That is. Must be really frightening, though.
Yeah,
my God.
Oh yeah, they don't evacuate people. The whole building there's a lot of that sort of stuff. A bit like in UFO when they go down in a lift to the sort of underground lair sort of thing of shadow. Underground lair makes it sound like they were evil. Anyway, those are our Gerry Anderson thoughts for today.
Absolutely.
And remember, folks, that if you order anything from the Gerry Anderson store, because you're a listener to this podcast, you have access to this incredible information. You can use the special code DESTROY, uppercase, all one word, 3 words together, all one word, and get yourself some free shipping. If you don't, then the Gerry Anderson store are just not going to sponsor us anymore. So for goodness sake, get in there and use that code.
Get in and do it. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, free shipping actually makes a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. It's a deal breaker for me. But why not? You got a code. It's like a secret club. Not everybody knows about this. Keep it on the DL. Use your code wisely and get yourself some rocking goods.
What does DL mean?
Down low. Keep it on the down low.
All right.
Yeah, Nick, keep it on the DL.
Are we having a generation gap moment?
Possibly are. But do you know what? I tend to use those phrases for more of a comedic term. Even then, I wouldn't. I
can tell you had your comedic face on.
That's my one comedic look that I have. Oh, he's gonna do a joke, isn't he? I
know that face.
He's got his comedy face. So yeah, use it wisely. But as well as that, we're also running a competition for you, that's right, you, to win a Blu-ray of the fully restored and remastered first series of Space 1999. So that within itself is pretty damn awesome. And I don't think we mentioned that the closing date for that one. So we better tell you, haven't we? It's April the 6th. So you've got a little while left to enter. I would, if I were in your shoes. If they fit.
Enter it, the question was, who did Roy Dotrice play in Space 1999? Just send your entries to podcast@bigfinish.com with the subject line Breakaway to be in with a chance. Good luck.
So very soon then we'll be chatting about this week's topic of choice, the changes. But before that, let's catch up with some of our emails. And remember, there's another email for you here, but it's the same email. You can email us at podcast@nicholasbriggs.com.
Okay, so Colin de Greus. Sorry, Colin, I always mess up pronouncing your name. De Greus. He sent in his superb Nick and Benji look-in cover, which I put on my official Facebook page. Do follow me on Facebook because there's lots of news about the podcast on there. I forgot to say, you ought to rate and review this podcast as well if you fancy it.
That's for it.
Help. Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyway, can you explain to the listeners what look-in was, even though you're too young to remember? Benji?
Look-in was it's like a weekly sort of pop culture. Is pop culture the right term for this? Pop culture magazine, wasn't it? Where it was a bit sort of, you can get a bit of everything in there. It was kind of like the dream. It was like the equivalent of a website, I suppose, like Digital Spy today, where you've got loads of different programs, and it was sort of a fun sort of little I say annual, but magazine. I've probably got it all wrong, but that's what
they did do annuals as well, but you're missing the essential pitch. They called it a Junior TV Times, and TV Times was the magazine of ITV listings. Just ITV, that's all that was in it. And Look-In was the junior equivalent. So they had listings in it of all the upcoming ITV programmes for the week, independent television, for those who didn't know what ITV stood for, and all the different regions. And it was they just listed all the kids' programmes. So that's just 2 hours every day. And so there weren't many pages of listings. And then the rest of it was articles about, pop groups and TV series and loads of comic strips as well. So they had fantastic comic strips of some great old... I think they even might have got to having a comic strip of Space 1999, actually. And certainly of Time Slip and The Tomorrow People. Shows like that.
I've just got the list here of the picture strips actually, whilst you were saying that, to see what they had, and you are
Thank
correct.
goodness for you and Google.
Oh, me and Google we're like this, and if you could see me there, I did the cross fingers thing. Yes, Space 1999 did have a picture strip, as did Catweasel, as did the Tomorrow People, The World at War for some reason. Okay.
That one as well, yeah. Well, there was a tradition of sort of educational comic strips back in the 60s and 70s. By the way, there were some messages on my official Facebook page. Philip Markham says, I think the Benji and Nick show should be getting a cut of the money Amazon gets out of me. Every episode I listen to, I end up buying something they talk about.
It would be nice.
Mitchell says, I desperately want Big Finish to do the further adventures of Bagpuss, please. My friend Fatima Issa says, as someone listening from the States, a majority of the shows discussed are ones I've never heard of or seen. Thanks
Brilliant.
for expanding my knowledge of these shows. Now, if I can only squeeze in a few viewings. And a little cat emoji. So, yes, thank you for that. I will put up... and Colin, your brilliant artwork. Colin also sent in a brilliant word search, a couple of pages from the annual. From the Look-In annual idea he sent in, and I will put those on the official Facebook page.
It is amazing, actually. It's such a... See, the thing about this that I particularly like, and this is the type of detail that impresses me, is that you've got all the sort of... It's all got a slight sort of... You've got the paper textures in there.
Yeah,
almost a slight blur, which makes it feel very real and raw, and it's awesome. But yeah, it's a funky word search, so if you're sitting on a Sunday and think to yourself... I've got nothing to do today. Do a word search.
Someone was appalled that I didn't know what a word search was, and I have apologised publicly for that. Anyway, I was going to read out Colin's email. Morning, chaps. After Nick mentioned Space 1999, I dug out the old box set and binge watched the entire first series. My favourite episode is Journey Through the Black Sun. It's ingenious. It's insane. Here is the look-in cover you didn't get last time, which we've just been talking about, with a few topic suggestions for your podcast. Well, he does suggest a few on the front. And a word search for Mr. Benji. Right, off to watch Series 2 of Space 1999, I imagine. Regards, Colin. Sent from my Moonbase Alpha Comm.
Oh, amazing. I tell you what, actually, this really is spurring me to get watching some Space 1999, because it's been cropping up quite a lot. I'm feeling this is going to be a thing. This has got to be a thing.
He mentions a Moonbase Alpha Comm. They actually call them Comm Logs because they were communication things and they locked doors. But the funny thing about it, I was talking to Gerry Anderson about this, who we really must get on the podcast.
Absolutely.
The other day.
He'd be a hoot.
It's like I like to blame him for all his father's mistakes. And I said, what's so good about the Comm Log? I said, because... it's meant to be personalised. The idea is only you can communicate on it, and only you, and they can restrict your access if you're, can't go to certain places. Your comm lock won't open them and all this kind of thing. But all you need to do to overcome that problem is just nick someone else's.
Perhaps it's data locked, perhaps it's...
No, it's not, because so many episodes of Space 1999 pivot on someone clubbing someone over the head and nicking their comm lock and then getting access to everything. Now, so there should be like a fingerprint recognition or something, I think.
Perhaps that happens in Space 2000. Well, they sit around this big table and say, well, we've had these many reports of people being knocked on the head, people nicking their comm locks. They got one bloke there going, maybe if we make them work with some gloves no, John, you just
someone will just nick the gloves.
John, I like the idea, mate, but you're not there yet. Oh, okay.
You're not cooking with gas.
So thanks for that one, Colin, though. Rock and roll. We got another email here from Carl Bates. Dear Nick and Benji, I must first congratulate you on your splendid podcasts.
I should point out he said Benji and Nick and not Nick and Benji.
I see.
He got it in the right order.
He got it in the right. So. I got it in the wrong order. I was just riffing and jamming with it. Benji and Nick. Jamming. So I'd like to congratulate you on your splendid podcasts. They are truly the derived birth of insanity that was clearly developing with the Big Finish podcasts, for which I don't know how you managed to produce 2 in a week. especially after reading today that Benji and you were on FaceTime call for 6 hours. Weird. Always works, and you have that in bucketfuls. I see what you mean. Yeah, weird always works, and you have that in bucketfuls. I mean this with the warmest and most admiring sincerity and love. Yeah, we do. We did like a day of. We did 2 podcasts, and in between we're just talking and resting and riffing and jamming. It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing. So Carl continues here. He says, but the whole thing works so well without a shadow of a doubt. I typed this email after listening to the latest instalment in which you both lovingly discussed the Children of the Stones. At least I think you did at some point. Although digression is the mother of all wonderment and entertainment on your audio outing, so don't change. It got me thinking about my own ludicrous and somewhat bizarre compulsion for watching TV from the 70s and 80s, maybe even creeping into the 90s. For one thing, there seemed to be a real need to tell a story back then, and relying on effects was not a thing widely available, for which I think the production benefited. Benji, what an excellent idea about network being able to stream content on a subscription basis. Absolutely. I, for one, would be second in the queue behind you for this. It's got to be something they have to consider in this day and age. I have made a list for future discussion based looking through DVDs that I've got or videotape for your consideration. Let's have a look at this list. Doom Watch. Absolutely. UFO, as you mentioned, of being a person of interest before. Yeah, man. We're UFO folk. Time Slip. Survivors, not to be confused with the now Superior reimagining and reworking. Well, I don't know about Superior. I think it all flows together quite nicely. It's all one big timeline of funky things, really. It's a lot to digest in Survivors. Do check that one out, the Big Finish range of Survivors. Just selling our own work that we've done there, Nick.
That's perfectly legitimate.
Stone Tape.
To be expected. Oh, yeah, Stone Tape.
Yeah, Stone Tape, man. That is a absolutely brilliant call there. And Omega Factor, not again confused with your Big Finish take on this. Keep up the good work, fellas, and on a personal note, you basically took the money out of pocket this week when I purchased copies of Children of the Stones, due to me having a DVD box but no DVD, and The Changes, which I seem to recall having a taped version on Betamax, which we all knew was far superior to VHS. But alas, I cannot find it. Devoted listener Carl, and I remember Carl tweeted with the telling us that he bought those, so good on you. You should be, hopefully, depending on how much time, you should be up to date now with the watching, so you'll be able to listen to this today with a fresh head on The Changes.
Yeah. By the way, Stone Tape is by Nigel Neal, the creator of Quatermass, so it's a really lovely bit of work. I'd love us to have a chat about that. Rob Perry writes in to say, hi, Nick and Benji. Just listened to your Children of the Stones episode and just wanted to help you out with something. The head-crushing sketch was from the fantastic Canadian Monty Python-inspired sketch show The Kids in the Hall. I've included a link to a battle between crushing your head and his nemesis pinching your face. Enjoy. Oh, and maybe an episode of Chocky in the future?
Chocky?
Rob.
Yeah. Cool. I like that.
Well, we'll have a look at that link on YouTube after the podcast. The crashing your face, crashing your head, pinching your face. Crashing your pinching. I got it all wrong. Anyway.
Right then. Well, thank you so much, everybody that's emailed in. Keep them coming, as always. We do try to read them out. But we have a volume of them coming through, so we don't always get round to it, but we try. We
will do eventually, I think. I'll do a catch up,
Ketchup. And mayonnaise.
Ketchup.
Right.
Very tasty.
So now, the moment of choice. The moment of choice, don't even know what that means. It is the topic of the moment, The Changes. That's right.
Okay, so when did you first see it?
Have to confess, actually saw it when the BFI made a big thing about releasing it. So this is... When was that? When would that have been? Because it feels...
About a year ago?
A bit longer than that, because I remember where I was when I watched it. I say where I
know
was.
My friend
had it on the go. I was going back and forth to Brighton University because I used to do some work for them. remember watching it on the train and not wanting to, and it stopped at Brighton Station, and I wanted to stay on the train and finish the episode.
I remember my friend Keith Barnfather, who produces the Mythmakers series, for Real Time Pictures. He contacted me and said, "Oh, I've just been watching it. Oh, it's just so brilliant to see it," because he remembers it from when he was a kid, because he's considerably older than me. But I was a teenager when I saw it. It was 1975, so it was the same year as the first series of Tom Baker. So I would have been about 12 or 13. I can't remember which. That's when I saw it, and I was fascinated by it. What was your first impression of it when you saw it?
Do you know what? I found it a bit strange, actually, because I'd seen small...
Should we explain what it is for those who are listening and don't know? It's the story of basically something weird happens and everyone in the UK starts beating up technology and rejects it and thinks that technology is evil. So society plunges back into a sort of medieval state. Some people try to get away to France, where it seems everything might be all right. So we don't know for certain, but it seems to be like a strangely British thing, and it ends up with there being a slightly fantastical, pseudo-historical, weird explanation for why all this has happened. We won't give away the ending entirely, although I might do later on when I start moaning about it.
Yeah, well, there is plenty to moan about with the changes. I'm not going to deny that one.
Yes.
So, was the question? What's the first thing that comes to mind with it? Would be
what's your first impression of it when you started?
My first impression,
it?
I thought it was weird because it's one of those things like it's if you look at the whole thing as a whole, it changes as it goes through. Like the start is very different to the end, and the middle is very different to the start. It feels like three different things almost, which I'll touch on. But yeah,
it's a shoe and a cake and
a packet of crisps and a button, and it was just odd, really. I'd seen a few clips on YouTube at the time before it was out, and so I had an idea of what it was going to be, but it was very different to what I expected it to be. Not in a bad way, just in a different way, really.
I agree with your analysis, actually. It does change quite considerably. There's the urban stuff, and it has her parents in it, and you worry about that. And then she meets the Sikhs, and she has a whole few episodes. I can't remember how many episodes there are. They're quite short, aren't they? They're like 20 minutes long.
Yes, they are. They're very short.
And there's sort of 10 or 12 of them or something. I was quite surprised how many episodes there were. What's great on the DVD release is that they have, in those days, the BBC would do a recap, especially for children's stories. And it has this very BBC announcer saying, "Nikki has unfortunately fallen off her horse. Her bottom is sore, but she hopes to put some cream on it soon." They don't actually say that.
It's exactly like that, though, isn't it? It is exactly that.
It's like a 2-sentence description of summing up the previous episode. And you think, that's right, actually. That only 2 sentences worth of stuff happened in the previous episode. The cliffhangers are quite anti-dramatic a lot of the time. It's like, you should go, otherwise you'll die.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it, is it? Right, Anyway, my initial reaction to it as a kid, really, because I still was a kid, was quite sexist in a modern context. It's about a girl. So the first thing was, I thought, I don't know whether I was 13. I don't know whether I was going to like watching a drama about a girl. But I was quickly won over by the fact that the actor, what's her name? So is she Nikki and the actor's Vicky? My son watched some of it with me. He found it very funny that they were Nikki and Vicky.
Yeah, Vicky Williams.
Vicky Williams. Now, I think she had quite a career, didn't she, Vicky Williams?
Oh, I think she did some Corrie.
Yeah. She was good. She was a really good leading actor, and I would, but I'm coming to the controversial point straight away. Really, I think the big problem with the changes. It's a great idea, and it comes from a book. I've never read the book, but it's a fascinating idea for presumably a kid's book. The real problem with the changes is that it is directed very, very poorly. It's shot on film on location, so it has a sort of veneer of stylishness and polish about it. And Paddy Kingsland, who was later part of the Radiophonic Workshop, I don't know whether he was at this point, has done a full score for it. Although my son said, when is this music going to stop or change? Because there is a tendency for him, for every cue, to find one particular repeating phrase and just keeps repeating it, It's like someone advised him that children can't appreciate sophisticated melodies. So find a melody and repeat it until you want to kill someone. It's just... and the direction is technically very bad as well, because you've got things like when you've got people's close-ups and they're dealing with inexperienced younger actors and they're meant to be talking to someone off camera, it is very clear that the someone off camera is probably not there, because they don't look like they're talking to anyone. You know what I mean? There's no contact in the eyes, and quite often the eye lines don't meet, and quite often the scenes are held for a very long time on a wide shot.
Yes.
When they should have cut in or done something more interesting. And a lot of the cuts don't work. There are different, there are continuity problems with the shots. And all of this is also to do with they were probably doing it on a really, really tight children's television budget.
Definitely.
And they had great ambitions. They went off with film cameras out into the country and shot everything on location. I don't think anything is shot on a set. It's all proper locations. The interiors of the buildings you see are actually the interiors of them, or very convincingly so. But apart from the chap from Face of Evil from Doctor Who, who played Neva in Face of Evil, I can't remember his name. What was his name?
I can't remember his name for the life of me.
I'm hoping you'll Google him.
I'll Google him now, yeah.
He was Davy in The Changes. Get the cast up. We had him in a Big Finish Doctor Who thing, actually.
David Garfield.
David Garfield, that's right. He's very good in it, but he plays a religious maniac like he did 2 years later in Face of Evil, funnily enough. They must have thought, he'd be good at portraying someone who's completely blinkered.
Safe pair of hands. There's another guy whose face I recognise in this, actually, and he's in...
who's from Arthur of the Britons.
Yes, absolutely.
He was in everything right about that time, a lot of kids stuff, and has the most incredible gaunt features. He plays the father of the... Anyway, this discussion is getting all over the place. What I want to say is that the stuff with the Sikhs is pretty good.
I love the stuff with the Sikhs.
There's a really good sort of story going on there, and then she meets up with these... She gets discovered in a barn, doesn't she, after she's injured, and she's there with a tractor and everything, and so she gets condemned to death by Davy.
And the devil, was it the devil's children or something?
No, that's what they called the Sikhs.
That's what they. Oh, that's right. They called the Sikhs the devil because it was all that weird like village. I remember watching it through.
They're going to stone her to death.
Oh, it's pretty odd. I remember though through.
And Davy's got kids collecting the stones. Now, you kids, you go and get the biggest stones you can find. And you think it's really. Even though it is, I think one of its faults for us watching it now is that it was clear, it's written, unlike Children of the Stones, it's patronisingly written. It's written down for children. Definitely. It still has these startlingly tasteless adult moments of talking about stoning people to death. There's a lot of alcohol consumption about. Suggestion that Davy and his cronies just get drunk rather than do anything useful. And then Davy is quite unceremoniously dispatched by being thrown into a river and drowning, so it's bizarre in that it talks down to children and yet it's quite ruthless and adult in some of its
it's almost like it doesn't quite know what it wants to be in a way. I mean, it's interesting when you say about the talking down to children thing. One of the big things for me that that really put me off this when I watched it, I like it, I do enjoy it, and I like the changes a lot. But the thing that I really remember being annoyed about was the character of Nikki. Really irritated me that after all this stuff, all she cares about is going to school, and she has this almost slightly obsessive a thing that she needs to go to school. I'm sorry, but if the whole world went completely crazy outside, if people were smashing all technology, including your parents who suddenly become crazy, afraid of technology, this.
But she was doing it as well.
She was doing it as well, but then she wakes up next day and she wants to go to school.
I see. I have to disagree with you there. I think that's a really nice point of her trying to get some normality back into her life, and her parents really try to stop her. They say, no, everything's changed, you can't, and she disobeys them. And I think I quite liked that aspect of it. I mean, it only happens in the first episode. I think also it was a sort of ham-fisted way of telling the child audience
always go to school.
Nikki is a good girl.
Yeah.
When all around her crumbles, she wants to do her English test or whatever it is.
Yeah,
she's quite. Yeah,
it's an interesting.
What would have been great is when she got to the school, because there's this little note stuck outside saying no school, is if there was a spelling mistake on it and she pedantically corrected it.
That would have been yes. Oh my God, yes. That would be brilliant.
In the middle of the apocalypse. Oh, they spelt it wrong.
Unbelievable. We think they've got... I would have liked the idea. Perhaps they could have changed it and she just sits the exam. And then
on her own.
And then there's just some bloke who has to do the marking whilst everything goes to chaos. But it's I think it's a weird one. I don't like the middle of it so much, all that stuff when it's in the village. I felt it went on for a long time.
Well, I think the real problem is that the boy, what's the character, Jonathan?
Yeah, with the narrow boat.
Yeah, he has a tug. Yeah,
tug, yes, yeah.
I'm so pedantic today, aren't I? I think you'll find.
I've not done the watching back of this week, so I'm going on memory. You see, I've been been working too much.
I had to force myself with a knife to watch all of it. Really, Jonathan. He is so terrible. He is such. What's the actor's name?
Jonathan. It is Keith Ashton.
Now, please tell me he had no career in acting, because he was execrable. I mean, it was just he doesn't mean anything he says. He doesn't understand what he's saying.
No, he's done two of your big finishes that you've directed.
I know he hasn't. But, I mean, let us hope he went on to improve as an actor.
Do you know what? Actually, he's actually done quite a few things. Did a few things since the changes. He was in Poldark, not the recent one, the '76 version. Yeah. The Sweeney, Z-Cars, Secret Army, which is amazing. What a bit of telly. The Invisible Man TV series. Although he did. I think things took a downturn. In 1984, he did 2 episodes of Big Deal where he played a milkman.
Well, I mean, I hope he's better in all those other things, because he is really awful in the changes and nearly makes it unwatchable.
I suppose he's young, isn't he? This is the thing. He was young at the time.
It's like he hasn't read the script. It's awful, and he never he's the one, particularly in all the close-ups, that he never looks like he's looking at or talking to the person he's meant to be talking to. Also, the woman who plays his sister is absolutely terrible.
Yes,
well.
she's not the best. Yeah, I'm watching it back actually in silence. I'm watching his body language is
that's just awful.
He's like, he doesn't do anything with his hands. Like, he holds them rigidly by his side in a very unnatural.
Although I do have a point to make about his hands, because he did, towards the end of it, he keeps touching Nikki quite inappropriately, and then you cut to other shots and he's not touching her anymore. It's like he sort of went for it thought, I could probably get my hand on her knee during this shot, and then suddenly in the next shot he hasn't got his hand on me, because they said cut, and Nikki said, or Vicky Williams said, can he not do that?
Can you stop touching me, please? You
and
weird
and there's
person.
scenes where he says, come on, and he sort of grabs her by the elbow like she's sort of incapable of moving of her own volition, and needs a man to propel her along. And then suddenly in the next shot, she's not doing it.
That's a really good observation, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that really. I mean, you see, already the guy. I wasn't on his side, so I'm starting to sort of nitpick. But it is. I mean, it is an acting problem, but it's also a directing problem. It feels like he was given no help. There's an inconsistency in the character as well, because there's this whole thing about how they discover this thing in a cavern at the end that is responsible for the changes. And Nikki doesn't... she is more affected by the changes, noise and everything than he is. And yet he is the one who says, we better not go on, and doesn't want to go on, and she does. Benji has just taken a screenshot and shown me him touching her on the knee. That was the bit in particular I was thinking about. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Because they're all sort of yes.
It's very unnecessary, actually.
Very unnecessary. Stop it.
No, but it is though. He doesn't need to be doing that. That shot especially doesn't need him doing that.
That shot I remember because I saw it just before we started recording, because that's in the last episode. And that shot in particular, I think, is the point when they'd really given up on his performance, because that entire scene is shot like that, which is the back of him and seeing her face. So you don't see his face. He has a lot of lines, but you don't see his face for most of that. There's a hell of a lot of it. They do cut back to him later. I'm exaggerating. And by the way, that is a very, very long scene about them talking about Merlin and explaining this rather ridiculous plot. I mean, that is the trouble with all science fiction and fantasy. When you come down to the actual explanation of all the interesting symptoms you've seen earlier on, which are fascinating and intriguing, and then someone at some point has to say, well, this all happened because...
Yeah.
The chances of the audience's expectations matching up with what the author's got to deliver are quite slim. So the explanation is always inevitably some form of letdown, isn't it?
It's with that. I think it's sort of, they've got that great supporting actor in the final two, that sort of really haunted sort of man who seems to be I love him to bits. I think he does a great job.
His name's sort of like Forbin Tune or something. What is it?
Let's have a look.
Forbin Tune. That's clearly a completely made up.
Mr. Furbelow.
Yeah, Mr. Furbelow. That's not Forbin Tune.
Forbin Tune. He did a Forbin Tune on the piano.
He's as good as the very small number of lines allow him to be. He mostly goes, no, don't, no, he's mine.
I like his look though. I think he's a very haunted looking guy. I mean, the thing I would say, I love the location stuff in particular. I really love that
it looks beautiful.
That cavern looks gorgeous, and the way they've done it is lovely. The bugbear for me, and again actually I find this really frustrating, is that every episode finishes, the end credits finish with a shot of that stone in the cave, which completely... I mean, I'm watching this program. I'm watching episode 1, where the world just plunged into this crazy sort of technophobic state. I'm in the middle of an urban city location, and it suddenly comes up with a stone. You just think, what's the significance of this? And instantly, it loses a bit of mystery, because if they suddenly got to this thing and they're like, whoa, that big massive stone is to do with this, then I'd be like, oh, that's amazing, like that's really cool. But when it's sort of every episode finishes with here's a stone, you think, it must
totally. And when you see it, you think, oh, well, that's the answer, isn't it? It'd be funny if it wasn't. It'd be funny if it was a hairdryer instead.
Yeah, well, maybe it was. Perhaps they had to change it.
Do you remember that she sort of tries to have a conversation? I mean, the ending is just so lame. She has this conversation, I'm just going to blow it, with this stone. She goes up to it and it's backlit with a sort of rim lighting around it. And all she can hear from it is kind of this. And she goes, yes, I know. And I think, what? Are we meant to understand what that thing is saying? Be a great podcast, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
And then she keeps saying to Jonathan, can you hear it? And then he says, no, I can't. And then he goes, oh, yes, I can a bit. But what can you hear? Can you hear? Because that's not worth hearing. and then
just noise.
What are you doing? Are you Merlin? Are you what? Later on he says, is it that thing? is it God? And she goes, no. Like she's some kind of theology expert.
Yeah,
I'd know God if I saw him, and that stone wasn't God. Well, no kidding.
Yeah, it's she's. I mean, the character Nikki. She's
It'd be very disappointing if you did finally speak to God and he just went. Well, that's all that praying, and that's all I get.
It's very underwhelming, isn't it? Really, but
sounding like you're talking through a dishcloth.
I mean, for me, that's how he speaks. For me, you know, my favourite thing about the changes. So I realise I'm making a lot of noise by scraping my foot across my desk.
The changes affecting you.
Oh, it is. Need to smash technology. My favourite thing about the changes has to be the music. I love Paddy Kingsland's score in this. As repetitive as it is, I really get what he's doing.
Yes, and he does there's a lot of variety in it, isn't there? Where each cue is often repetitive, but the difference between cues is almost sounds like different composers. Although there are the flourishes of things that you will later recognise in Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
You know, especially his that he does whenever there's an action scene.
The thing I like about it is that I came to this with my experience of Paddy Kingsland's music from his Doctor Who stuff, in which the synthy stuff is it's almost like he's embarking on that sort of new synth generation that was sort of emerging in the late 70s, early 80s. So you get a lot of, I think it's like Jupiter 8 sort of style stuff. It probably isn't a Jupiter 8, but it certainly sounds like one. But in this, you get some real lovely...
Is that the spaceship from Lost in Space? Oh no, that's the Jupiter 2.
Close enough. There was a Jupiter 2, I think, keyboard. But in this, you get a very analog style of synthesizer that he's using, which is lovely because I love that particular sound. Very, very raw, contrasted by things like the sitars of the when the wonderful Sikhs are in it, which I love. The whole Sikh part of this for me is my favourite bit, because that's
the story, and that's the thing people remember about it, and that is why the BFI are interested in it, because of that sort of depiction of racial issues at a time when there were a lot of racial tensions in the UK because of there'd been an influx of Ugandan Asians, and there was all sorts of. And
it's done wonderfully respectfully, which is really nice. It's really a lovely way of educating children of the culture, but also saying, in this situation, saying there's no divide. We should not be divided over these. We live very differently to people's culture, but they look after Nikki. They take Nikki in. They help her when she's alone and vulnerable. Yeah. They
save the local community as well from the terrible robbers.
And they also there's that great
the leader
sequence
of whom is the war chief, or the war from the war games in Doctor Who, and it was also in Rent a Ghost. He was Mr. Bad Guy and also Derek Ware, the guy who created Havoc, the stunt group, which I presume is why he was there, because they have a particularly unconvincing battle.
The thing about the battle that I love the most is there's this great sequence of the Sikhs training for battle.
Yes.
And they've got like sticks and dustbin lids, I believe. I'm trying to find it here.
They're not dustbin lids, they're actual traditional shields.
From my memory, they're dustbin lids. Let me go through and find.
They are about that size, but no, they're proper.
Makes me wonder why are they carrying the traditional shields around,
Well, because, it's part of their culture. That's why they've got these sticks and stuff. Staffs, they are, really.
But it's a wonderful, it's sort of, the music over the top of it. I can remember really... like but I'm really excited because I did tweet. I often the power of a tweet, guys. A big advocate for Twitter here. The power of a tweet is that you can tweet people and just say, I've tweeted multiple times saying I would love for them to formally release Paddy Kingsland's score for the changes, and I was absolutely overjoyed, much to the surprise of the people in the record shop, because they didn't expect people to come in for such an obscurity. that their Silver Screen are releasing the changes on a vinyl as well. I assume then that will go on to CD or digital versions. But so to hear it all, because there's only a small 5-minute segment that was released on a Radiophonic Workshop CD selection of stuff. So to hear the full thing is going to be great. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, I mean, the music does help to sort of cover up some of the deficiencies in the action scenes. You can hear sort of... Because, you know, the people who are fighting on horseback, the horses aren't very responsive, are they? They're kind of geeing the horses, going, oh, and the horse is like, I don't really want to be in this fight scene, actually. And, you know, and it's not shot imaginatively enough to cover up the fact that what's happening isn't very exciting. I mean, I thought, I could think of a way of shooting that wouldn't be so rubbish. Says Mr. Director.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things, like you say. It's probably was done very quickly on a very low budget, and to give them their dues, they found a lot of great locations. But yeah, the problem is, what is it? Never worked with children, animals, and something else. Actors, I don't know.
Humans,
human beings. You know, they've bitten off almost more than they can chew with this series. I think there's a huge volume of... I assume they must have shot most of it in Wales, because you've got all the slate quarries towards the end, and wouldn't it have just been easier?
I don't know what the location for it is. Can you find out online?
I will find out. It feels like...
I mean, I will say this, I'm sort of conflicted. I can't work out whether there's a paucity of ambition in the production or it was over ambitious, because a lot of it feels, in terms of the acting and direction, like they just weren't trying. They just thought, that'll do. It doesn't matter. They just... Yeah. But at the same time, maybe they were over-ambitious and had far too much to do, so they just didn't have the time to concentrate on any of the detail. Because, yeah, it is ambitious in its scope, the different locations and all that kind of thing. Have you found out what the location is?
Yes, I have. It was filmed in Bristol, the Forest of Dean, and Sharpness.
There you go. I thought the city was Bristol because of all those steps
and lovely buildings, and
yeah.
But interestingly enough, the other thing it says here, the internet's a powerful being, isn't it? That Paddy Kingsland...
It's not a being, Benji.
It is. It is a being.
If it's a being, it's going to speak like this.
Absolutely.
Oh, great internet. Can I hear some of your wisdom? Oh, get stuffed.
I've had enough. You're no longer wise. It does also list here that Paddy Kingsland used the EMS Synthi 100, which is a legendary synthesizer. And for those of you who like that sort of thing, or those of you that just want to be baffled by technology, the look of a EMS Synthi 100, it's a huge, what you call like a modular, is the technical. It's like a big box synth. So if you look at it, it's like a supercomputer from something like Doctor Who. It takes up a wall. It's huge. It is a beast, but it's a glorious beast. I mean, it really is. It is the pinnacle of what you would imagine a synthesizer to look like.
So, in conclusion, I'm very sorry to say, and I just feel like maybe I'm just in a bad mood, but I'm giving the thumbs down to the changes, because even though it is very significant and it's as a piece of social commentary, and even though the essential storyline is great and the lead actor is great, there are so many things in it that are appallingly mediocre and badly executed that it just made me so cross. I mean, and after having rewatched Children of the Stones, which is none of those things, you know, it's got all the ambition. It's you know, even though a lot of it's studio bound, it's shot imaginatively, it's acted impeccably. You know, it's got a great cast, and they are doing an adult drama, even though it's for kids. And the kids in it are pretty good. I mean, they look like Oscar winners compared to the supporting children's cast in The Changes. And, you know, and why was that? Was it the director? Was it the raw talent of the actors? I think it's a combination of all of it for Children of the Stones. And stacked up next to that, I think The Changes is possibly aimed at a slightly younger age group. And I think there was a tendency in the 70s for BBC children's programmes to be slightly more patronising to children. I think the ITV stuff, especially from HTV, was a little bit more, do you know what? We're just going to give them a great drama.
I think there's definitely a flavour of that. I mean, that's a very good analysis, really, of the changes. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a thumbs down from me. I would still thumbs up it, because I think for something, if you're sat on a Sunday and want to watch a nice drama, I think the changes offers a lot in terms of variety of locations and characters, and in terms of it's not what you.
It's a good curiosity piece of archives material.
It's not what you expect.
To be devoted to that cause, but it would certainly on a Sunday afternoon send you off into a snooze.
I could, well, a happy snooze. Well, depending on what you're into.
No, I think I'd rather, that kind of thing where you just, like, you're doing homework you don't want to do, and you think, oh, I can't watch any more of this. I mean, my son he's 8, and he's sort of part of the target age group, and he found it fairly intolerable. Also, my father-in-law, who watched some of it with me, he couldn't make head nor tail of it. He was going, these people are terrible.
That's a good attitude, though, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's like you pretty much captured it in the word. It's a curiosity piece. I think it doesn't pull off what it sets out to do, but it was released anyway, if that makes sense.
They went and made it anyway.
Well, there's a lot of ideas in there. Somewhat, I think. I tell you, if I was doing it, how I would have done it is I would have gone a bit more down the Children of the Stones route, seeing as the whole thing is wrapped in deep within very British style sort of level of like paganism, and there's levels of witchcraft and almost culty sort of things going on. Merlin wrapped around with a mythical stone. I think the way I would have done it is I would have gone more down the route of like the Children of the Stones level of it being very because Children of the Stones feels quite Celtic in a way, and I would have gone like I tell you the vibe that I would have probably gone down is like like the Wicker Man.
Yes,
that's that vibe in which it feels incredibly you feel you feel wrapped up in that, in sort of a culture that is alien to us. That's how I would have done it. I would have very much had, after the changes, things changed and it went back to this very strange. I would have taken it that way, because I think then. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think there is a great. I haven't read the book, and perhaps I should read the book. Perhaps I shall seek it out. But I think there is a great drama to be made from the changes, and this was not it.
I think, great ideas, questionably executed. I think that's how we can summarise it, really.
And it's not just because it's of its time. That is a huge element of it, because of the attitudes towards the kind of children's television that was being made there. But stuff that's almost contemporary with it. Well, also like Time Slip, which was years earlier. God, it's really controversial. I'm really saying that the ITV children's stuff seems to kind of be better than the BBC stuff, actually, even though this was a more polished production in terms of film quality and what have you. But prove me wrong, folks. Write in and argue.
Yeah, I think, and if you've not seen it and you want to see it, watch it, because it's an interesting piece of television and history, coupled
you watch
with
it from that point of view.
Absolutely. Well, that's the only way that really. That's the reason I watched it.
But if you don't want to watch it from that point of view, I really would tell you not to bother. I found it so frustrating and so annoying and so 10th rate at times that I just thought, oh, for goodness sake,
So there we have it.
It felt as inappropriate to be me watching Play School or something, which is probably a bit more entertaining.
So there might be some good story arcs in Play School going on, but it's an interesting one. But hey, that's why we're here, and that's why we do this, because it's fun for us to look back retrospectively over things that we've seen, and it's fun, hopefully fun for you. It might be torture. You might just be hearing this all the time. You not really know what's going on. But either way, this is why we do it, because it's interesting.
And remember, you can email us with your suggestions for podcast topics, or just comments or bizarre facts and opinions to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com.
that was wonderfully done, and it sounded even better for me because for some reason I could hear two things coming through. There was like your main microphone and then a background, so you sounded mildly modulated. It was wonderful. It was really was quite special. And remember, as well as sending your emails to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com, that also you can... Yes, he's kidnapped in the back. Also, that you can get free shipping from the Gerry Anderson store, which is just... It's the deal breaker, and you can find that at gerryanderson.co.uk simply by using the code destroy, all one word. Well, it's 3 words into one, all capitalized there.
Right, time now to decide on next week's discussion topic in the Benji and Nick show. Hopefully something I won't be so bloomin' miserable about.
Do you know what? I was thinking about this. Seeing as the podcast is sponsored by Gerry Anderson, surely we should... Why don't we do something like a quintessential, like a Captain Scarlet or a Thunderbirds thing? Because that will give me some time as well to catch up with UFO and Space 1999, because I've not seen that in such a long time, and I don't own any of it on DVD.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, should we do Thunderbirds then?
Thunderbirds would be a rocking one to do.
I'll just be going brilliant all the time. But yeah, I'll watch some old Thunderbirds and see how we go.
Maybe what we'll do is, this is a good idea. We'll go through, we'll decide on some to watch. Both watch it, the ones, and then we can have something to riff on, which could be nice. Okay. Yeah? You feeling that?
Well, also, folks, good idea, Benji. Also, folks, send us in your comments about Thunderbirds in advance, so we've got some stuff to discuss, some points any interesting points you want to make about it, things you particularly liked or even didn't like about it. Let's hear from you at podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. Anyway, so time to go back to talking like this, because it's pretty much the end of the Benji and Nick show.
That's right, as it fades into the distance of time, space, music, sound and sangria, we say a lovely goodbye here at Benji and Nick HQ. I was about to say Nick Tech.
Nick Tech.
Goodbye. I don't know what it is. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Pressing stop now.